Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Royal Oak Public Library. My name is Matthew Day, and I'm Head of Adult Services here. Tonight, it is my pleasure to present Falling for Good Book series from the Detroit Working Writers and its President, Roberta Brown. The theme of the session is Memoir and Family History Writing, and we will be treated to readings from 4 different renowned authors. Looking ahead, November the 10th is fantasy and science fiction authors, and December 7th is the middle grades and young adult writers. But before we begin, I wanted to draw your attention to a few points. Please note that this will be recorded and played on WROK, which is a local cable company. And lastly, I also wanted to ask you to keep your audio and video switched off in order to avoid background noise. All right, so that's enough out of me. I want to thank you all for coming, though, for it promises to be a good evening. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Detroit Working Writers, I am President Roberta Brown, and we welcome you to tonight's reading. Detroit Working Writers is an organization that is 120 years old. It was founded on June 5th of 1900 and features writers who have been published in a variety of genres. I will be putting into the chat our website, our Facebook page, and our Twitter handle, so that if you want to check us out some more, you can do so. In the meantime, if we're curious as to where everyone is from, so if you could enter into the chat what city and state you're from, because we know we have some people from around the country who are attending tonight. So while you're doing that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Angela Rochon. Angela has an MA and an MSW. She has taught, she has been a psychiatric therapist, and also in supervisory management. These positions led to teaching memoir writing, guiding reminiscence groups, leading grief support groups, and public speaking. She is an award-winning poet, a member of Detroit Working Writers, and her work has appeared in newspaper columns, magazines, and academic journals. She has earned the Toastmasters International's Distinguished Toastmaster level in speaking and leadership. She has published Fatherless, My Father's Memoir, and Mine in 2018, and Piece to Piece Cancer Quilt in 2019, and has just completed her most recent manuscript, Gift of Kindness, Stories of Good Deeds During Bad Times, as a memoir of COVID-19's impact on small town life. So Angela, I will turn the floor over to you, or the Zoom square as it were, over to you. And Angela will take questions at the end of her presentation.
I am delighted to have this opportunity to talk about memoir. Memoir is so important. And writing my father's memoir and mine, in writing that, I learned so much more. Just as I would write a session, other memories would surface. I also had the great advantage of writing this book and living in the same town in which I grew up. So during the 4 years that I worked on this book, lots of people in town would say, "Oh yeah, I remember your dad. I remember I was in the service with him in 1945. I remember your dad, he was my barber. I remember your dad, he was like a dad to me." I want to mention 2 things, just briefly, about my father's memoir and mine. Just 2 brief things about this book, My Father's Memoir and Mine. And then I want to get into the crux of my presentation, which is to feature the section at the end of my book in which I offer you many suggestions as to how to write your own memoir. So let's get started. My father's memoir and mine, Fatherless, that is entitled Fatherless because my father was born after his father died. His father was killed, and then his mother remarried, and he had a wonderful stepbrother. And then at age 12, his stepfather was killed. Therefore, it sounds like a really sad story, but in fact it is not. This book is a celebration. It's a celebration of the reconciliation in a family of Sicilians who had a 50-year feud. 50 years. 50 years. And for much of that time, I worked and worked to get the parties in question to get along. When they finally did, I felt this book would celebrate the reconciliation. My dad's family was joyful and hardworking, poverty-stricken, but they were devout and kind-hearted, except for Vito, the murderer. Now, let's get on to how I would suggest that you start writing your memoir. First of all, tonight, before you go to bed, set aside 3 minutes, just 3 minutes, and write down one happy memory. Sign it and date it. And then tomorrow morning, key it in and have it in your handwriting and also in typing. And then put that in your safety deposit box. It's that important. Something written in the hand of someone you love. That is precious. Now, I suggest that you write and read, that you read many memoirs. And when you do that, you will come to the same conclusion. After I wrote all the memoirs that you'll see in the section of the book, after I read all those, I realized there's no right way to write a memoir. There's no wrong way to write a memoir. It is indeed your own story. And who is the expert? Who's the expert? Who knows the most about your life and your family? Now, there's a little caveat here, because may be that some members of your family didn't see the story the same way that you did. Well, that's fine. They can write their own memoir. We can only write from our own perspective and from our own experience. And I don't mean to minimize that, because to know and to share that is a privilege. The second suggestion is to call on all of your senses: hearing, taste, touch, smell, and vision. And for that area, I'm going to call on one of the chapters. Its title is Good Like Bread. My grandmother had a brick oven in the yard. She baked bread. Their home was next to a fire hall. The scent of that wonderful bread would waft over to the firemen, who began to purchase her bread. Therefore, she had a little outdoor bakery going on and a little bit of income coming in. And I think part of the income coming in was certainly it was delicious bread. It is a bread that I've had throughout my own childhood that's unbelievably wonderful. But I think that the kind firemen also wanted to be of help to a widowed woman, twice widowed woman actually, with 6 kids. As it turned out, the youngest of her children was 2 years old when her second husband died, and he became a fireman, and I'm not surprised. So I'm talking about the smell of bread, nothing like it, the taste of bread. Also, the sight of bread. You look at it and it just immediately brings you back to those times. Now, speaking of vision, since my book is set in some chapters in World War II, I watched a lot of period movies. I watched a lot of old movies and noticed what the women wore, what the men wore, hats, noticed all the people who were smoking, noticed many things, including the bright red lipstick they wore. And you'll notice that for that occasion, I have bright red lipstick on. So you want your reader to see the person you're talking about. Now, it could be that you have to make things up a little. You have to invent the actual. So if I describe my Aunt Betty in her blue house dress, I don't know anymore if it was blue. I remember it was dumpy looking, but the fact is, it was a house dress, and women in those days did not wear slacks. They didn't wear shorts. They wore house dresses. And men wore hats. So if you immerse yourself in the sights and sounds of the period in which your book is set, then people are able to connect with that. There's also the matter of keeping in mind that your readers really need to know the details. And as I say, you can invent those details. Now, that doesn't mean that you're lying. It just means that you're making those people in your family more real, more people than characters. And I didn't have any problem doing that because I, in fact, worked with 6 generations of my families. Now, probably you may decide to make your memoir a little bit less complicated. But since mine was complicated, I felt it was important to provide more than just the words, and also the photos. The photos actually appear on the book that was designed by Mark Rochon, who is my son and who is the graphic artist. So pictures help. But what also happens, what is also very helpful is a genogram. Now, a genogram is not a genealogy tool. It is a document actually used by doctors or therapists to kind of identify the concerns or problems or issues in the family and to show what happened in that family's life. Because all of my immigrants on both sides came straight from Sicily, got married early, had babies early, and their babies had babies early. I had the uncommon honor to know my father's grandmother. Now, that doesn't always happen today, and I'm going to just show you a quick example of what I'm talking about in a genogram. You don't have to worry about reading the individual people's names, etc. I just want you to see what a genogram is, and you can look on the internet. You can purchase a program. Mine was kind of expensive because, it was a professional one, but mine was a complicated 6 generations. But you can go online and find a pattern for writing a genogram. And when you, it's probably better if I hold it up right side up. I'm just thinking. Anyway, in making a genogram, you choose what to put in the legend. So when I wrote about my family, I identified the issues in my family, including alcohol abuse. I identified immigration and language difficulty, serious psychological problems, serious physical problems, and I had color-coded all the causes of death. There are symbols, standard symbols. If a person has come in from another country, then there's like a little wave. It shows immigration. If they don't speak English or didn't speak English, well, they get a little L next to their box. If they're married, they get a plus. If they're not, they get a slash. Anyway, I just want you to think about those who do more looking and less reading, who are visually, who have a visual outlook. Actually, that's another thing that my son pointed out. He likes to see things. We have a few more minutes as I finish my suggestions. So if you have any questions, you can start forming them and shipping them over to the chat box so that Matthew Day will have them and can ask them, and then I will respond to them. But the fourth suggestion that I have is to, if you write, join a critique group or form one, because writers help writers. Honestly, I think everything I write is wonderful, articulate, great. But when I have a helpful and kind person reading mine, they can gently tell me, you maybe want to revise that a little bit. So get together with other writers. You'll learn from other writers. Writers help writers. I want to sincerely thank the Royal Oak Public Library and the St. Clair County Library, which is where I live across from Canada, because the resources of the library made a very big difference for me in the writing and mostly in the technical parts of the book. So be sure to use the resources of the library. They're there for us, and they have been wonderful in providing this opportunity for us today and giving us the venue in which we can reach out to people, and I know who you are, who are all over in Alabama, in Penticton, Canada, in Florida, in Michigan. I know you're out there, and this is a wonderful opportunity for us to share. Now, I'm wondering, Matthew, do we have any questions at this point as to any information about my father's Fatherless, my father's memoir and mine?
No questions yet.
Okay, well, let me just state then that Fatherless is about the man who was so very important to me, and he became fatherless, as I mentioned, and then he died when I was 17 and my sister was 13. So then we were fatherless too. So there is a certain perspective for people who grow up without a father. And when it's a beloved father, it's such a pleasure to be able to bring him back to you in your thoughts, in your words, and to hear from others who knew him. It took me 4 years to write this book, and I didn't really want it to stop. I didn't want to stop writing. It is just there's just a cathartic process that evolved as I thought about my beloved father. It really brought him closer to me. Is that inspiring you to think of writing 3 minutes tonight and writing some sweet story from your own life and putting that, signing it and dating it and putting that in your safety deposit box? I certainly hope so.
There's one question. How long did it take you to write your book? I think you said 4 years.
It took me 4 years, yes.
Yeah. In writing of the book, did you find out facts or information that was surprising to you?
I'm sorry, Matthew?
Were you surprised when you researched for your book? Did you find out anything in researching your book that you didn't know about? Anything surprising?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know about the murderer. And it probably would have been nicer for me if I didn't. But that's part of my heritage. Mm-hmm. And I felt that I had to be honest. I also tried to be very careful. And even though there are people in my family, not surprisingly, I suppose, when you look at 6 generations, that I really didn't even like. But I got to know them better too. And I got to understand how very difficult their lives had been, especially the immigrants, especially the poverty-stricken immigrants. And who said that I would be any better? Who knows what I would be like had I been in those circumstances?
Okay. Did you continue to write about happy memories each day, or did you change to a different focus as you became more involved in the project?
I became more involved in the project and began to write about many more things besides happy occasions. But I did find it helpful occasionally to remind myself of the good side and the happy memories, because otherwise mine could have been a very, very somber book. And instead it is a celebration.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all.
Thank you so much. It's
Thank
been
you.
a real pleasure. I truly looked forward to this, and it was everything I had hoped for.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Nancy Owen Nelson.
I realize I'm in a dark room here. Everyone else is so lit up, but perhaps I will evoke Halloween in the background. Thank you so much. Wow, Angela, you've said so many things that resonate with me and also show me the truth behind the fact that our approaches can be so very different, and they come to the same places, but we may start from a different piece of information. I would say that the parallels also between your situation and mine are loss. I have some kin on here. I'm so excited, who know about the memoir, my first one, Searching for Nanny B. And my mother and my grandmother are both named Nanny B. No period, and nobody really knows what the B was for. But about 9 years ago, my mother has been gone for a while. I just got the urge to find out about her mother, who died an hour after her birth. And there was always a loss in my mother's life, and I didn't realize, and I think the genome thing that you pointed out probably connects very well, that there can be actually inherited trauma and loss through something called epigenetics, which I found out from a student of all things. My journey began with Ancestry.com, because everybody was, which is a great place to go, but everybody was pretty much gone. My mother had been gone 11 years. My grandmother had been gone since 1905. So what are you going to do? I didn't even know where she was buried. So I began basically with a search, and I just wanted to read, if I could, a short section of Searching for Nanny B, which if you care to explore my website, there is a link for purchase, and also you can email me at nellnan@aol.com. Oh, there, I see the website is up there, for a signed copy, and I'm happy to send that to you as well. So I'm just going to read a little bit about this, and then thinking about time here, I will go briefly to the memoir that's coming out in the spring. This is from a chapter, Search, 2012. Early in this new year, my search for Nanny B. Russell Chandler, that was my grandmother's full name, her grave drives my thoughts during the day and my dreams at night. When I'm not teaching or preparing for class, I spend every available moment researching. The search continues even in my sleep. I dream of driving a wagon with horses over muddy country roads. My mother is with me. All I know is that we are trying to find my grandmother's grave. Now, this is in rural Alabama, by the way. The roads at that point were muddy. There was very little, there weren't even cars about, if you can take yourself back to that time. And speaking of visiting history. All I know is that we're trying to find my grandmother's grave. I maneuver the horses away from deep ruts, fearing we will get mired in the mud. We come to a rushing stream and are unable to cross. It's too deep and fast. The dream ends. I would point out that once you start doing this, you are literally haunted by the project. However it haunts you, it could be in dreams, it can be in taking notes at night, it can be in Ancestry.com. searches. So basically, I found finally a very tiny little post for a Nanny B. Chandler in a database of Alabama deaths in the 1900s. And 4 entries. This is my book is actually the process of discovery as well, by the way. 4 entries down the list is a small window showing a portion of a typed document. The name Nanny B. Chandler is highlighted. I click on the window and a document opens up. Bethel Cemetery Records, Nanny B. 1N, wife of R.E. Chandler. No dates. Name misspelled. My temples pulse, I think I've found her. I search for Bethel cemeteries and primitive Baptist churches in Alabama. There is one primitive Baptist Bethel church in the northern part of the state on Sand Mountain. I click on the link and I find a long piece about the history of the cemetery, how during the Civil War the church members were against slavery and had Southern folks who sympathized with the Union. How great it would be to find the legacy of social justice in my mother's side, the same values my father had given my sisters and me. Dad taught us not to hate, to see the justice in the Black people's march for civil rights. At this point, I'm not sure how these ideas connect with primitive Baptist theology. All I know is that my great-great-grandfather, John R. Russell, listed 2 hired hands in the 1890 census. They were white. I hope my family did not own slaves. I'll stop right there and just say that there are so many unknowns at this point in the search. I did find one family with slaves and did publish a poem about that. I also found out a great deal about my grandmother from stories handed down. The woman who was her great niece was 93. I interviewed her on the phone. I have recorded interviews. I see Angela is loving that. And then she passed the next year, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I got also the cover. This is not the best one, but you can see, has buttons on it. These are the very buttons that my grandmother apparently wore on her clothing, which I couldn't believe I had my hands on after all of those years. So Memoir will take you everywhere. It'll take you everywhere, and sometimes, Angela, you're so very kind and loving about your process, and I try to be that too, but sometimes I find things that are difficult, and so I try to be honest about them, because it is my story and my way of telling, and as you said, there are many, many ways to do that. So I would move briefly to the book that is going to be published next spring or late spring about my father, who was a hero to me. He died at age 62. He was troubled with addiction, with alcohol, and also depression. And in 1968, you didn't know much about that stuff, and I was 23, so what did I do? I grieved and I lived on my years and began to write about him. And so I tried to understand as I went through my life. I married a number of times, and this is the tough part, if you're willing to put yourself out there. I married a number of times, and I wanted to understand why. And so this is called Divine Aphasia, which is a literary reference to Beckett. A woman's search for her father. And thank you. And this is the cover. And I will read something if my time is still okay. I hope I'm all right. Somebody will just yell at me if I'm not. Let me just check this real quick. Yes. Okay. At any rate, this cover took a lot of angst to get figured out. This is me standing, I'm about 5, standing in a field in the University of Alaska campus. The dog tags are my father's dog tags. So the story is basically going through my childhood and the reasons I was compelled to try to find my father in other people, which isn't probably an unfamiliar story. I'm just going to read a little bit, and My timer's not working, so I'll make it quick. This is in a chapter called Out into the Cold and Dark. And I was there for kindergarten, so these memories are still very strong. My first Alaska memory is of bouncing around in an Army airplane in the dark, above snow-covered ground, from Anchorage to Fairbanks. Daddy is with us, and the plane acts like a roller coaster. He's throwing up in a paper bag. At the same time, the pilot invites my sister Marge, who's feeling better after the flu, to the cockpit to watch them fly the plane. I think it's because she's pretty that Marge gets to go watch the pilots. I peer out of the frosted window and the snowy ground racing past us below. We land in the dark. The only lights I see are tiny flickering lights along the sides of the short runway. The moment we depart from the plane, I feel the strangeness of Alaska. Tonight the snow is deep. A man's voice, muffled through my thick earmuffs, says, "You better carry her high, Colonel. Should be buried in all that damn snow." As my dad lifts me up, all I can see is a clear sky with stars. I wish I could fly through that sky to the stars, just like we did in the airplane. Someone else says it's 30 below. My nose and cheeks burn, and the night smells like a freezer when I open it to get ice cream. The next morning, Mom climbs upstairs from our basement apartment to pick up some cartons of milk that were delivered. She chops the milk into pieces so I can eat my Cheerios. My teeth hurt when I crunch the icy milk. At 5 years old, I had no notion about the strategic importance of Alaska to our country's Cold War strategy. Ladd Air Force Base was one of the northernmost surveillance sites, a front line, so to speak, to identify and destroy any attackers headed south from the Soviet Union. I now comprehend the importance of our location, but as a small child, the only clue I had was my dad's secretive exits during the night. I'm tucked into bed, warm, even though the chill of the Alaska night seeps in around the edges of our windows. I'm fast asleep when a loud siren blasts the quiet like a battle horn. I hear murmuring, someone moving about our apartment, and then the door closes firmly. Daddy is gone again into the night. This is called an alert, and he has to go. Something might be happening with the Russians. When your dad is called away like this, he doesn't know where he's going or when he'll come back. He might have to go somewhere secret and do an important job. Mom tells me this each time he leaves in the night. I lie in my warm bed wishing he had kissed me goodbye before he left. During high alerts, especially when there is light, we're told to not to look out of our windows, to stay away from them and close all of the curtains. Our apartment is in a basement, and one day, against the rules, I climb on a chair and peek out of our ground level window. I can see the blades of grass and the lawn outside. I feel small here in the apartment in the basement, with the grass at eye level. I watch soldiers in uniforms with helmets play hide and seek around some tall fir trees. They have long guns, and it's fun to watch. But like the siren in the night, these games give me knots in my stomach. Many nights, I wake up to darkness and total silence. I wait for the siren, hoping that Dad won't be gone too long. Such images of Alaska stay with me because this place was different from anything I had experienced in my short lifetime. The sunshine on the snow looked like crystals. Icicles hung long and sharp off the eaves of our apartment house. I would knock an icicle down with a snowball and suck it hard and smooth on my tongue. Mom loved the icy winter, walking with the general's wife over the frozen river. She wrote poems about the river and the trees, the snow coating everything like icing. "This is the most beautiful place we've ever lived," she exclaimed, more than once. Outside our apartment building, on a big field where kids play in the summer, the Army battalions march in formation to a band playing a Sousa march. One afternoon, I stand with my mom and sister watching Dad's battalion go by us. He marches on the front corner. He's very close to me. He stares ahead as if in a trance, growling orders that come from deep in his chest. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm standing so close to him and so proud of him. I yell, "Daddy, Daddy!" I want him to see me and wave, but he won't look at me. He keeps marching and growling orders. His eyes look straight in front of him. I am invisible. I understand now why he didn't look at me as much as he wanted to. I imagine his face struggling to remain stiff, fighting the crooked smile, the right corner of his mouth trying to lift in response to my calling out to him. He was such a soldier that he would force the smile away. But back then, I didn't understand why he wouldn't look at me. And I'll wrap it up with this final paragraph, which reflects the cover. One photo from Alaska speaks to my experience there. My sister Marge took it right after we had looked at a big bear at the University of Alaska Museum. To me, the bear seemed 20 feet tall, but when as an adult I see him in a 1954 National Geographic, the bear is only 9 feet tall. When I gazed up at him, I became invisible. Just minutes later, after we left the museum, I was alone in an empty field somewhere in the university campus. In the photo, I look so tiny that you can't really see my face anymore, just a vague smudge on the top of my body, as if I'm smiling, but you can't tell, and no one else is around. Thank you. Do I have questions? I can't see. Oh.
No, just comments, no questions as such.
Oh.
Somebody writes, "Wow, this was powerful." I can really see and feel those moments. Sounds amazing. Thank you.
I actually have my niece here, Tammy, and also Shelley, Ken. And Shelley, I don't believe knew my dad, but it's Tammy's grandfather. So I'm so grateful. I can't see everybody who's here, but I thank you. I hope we can save the chat so I can take a look at that. And I had one question about the poem on the slaves. That is in my book, My Heart Wears No Colors, which is off of the website as well. It's called Found on Ancestry.com, 16 Slaves. And I'd like to dialogue with Angela for just a second. Could I do that?
Sure.
I just want to know more about what resonated. Did anything touch on your process here? I'm sure it did, because our processes end up being very intimate, don't they, to ourselves?
Dreams. My father came to me in dreams. My grandfather, whom I never met, came to me in dreams.
Okay.
And my cousins after. That's why the reconciliation of the family was so wonderful. We got together. I was at that point 17 years old the last time I saw my cousins, and they had been coming every summer, and they'd stay for half the summer, and we had wonderful times. And then I didn't see them for 50 years. So when we got back together again, they told me stories from their parents about my dad as he was growing up. So they brought him back to me in their stories, and there's a cadence in the sound of the people from Youngstown and in every region. So I could hear his voice in there.
It's so, and for me, everybody is almost already gone by the time I start. But you get documents, you get a thread of a story. People saying my grandmother, whom I couldn't. I mean, even my own mother, didn't have anything of hers, but she heard that she had a beautiful voice and she would sing in church, and so I could picture her from that and one photo. So you can do a lot. I think we could tell everybody you can do a lot with a very little bit.
Sure, and I must tell you this, one of my cousins emailed me recently and said, wow, I was on Amazon surfing the net and I saw my Uncle Angelo. So she didn't know about the book. And so we got in touch again. We hadn't talked. I hadn't seen her since she was 13 and I was 17. So even the book in itself has reunited others. And also others have told me who've read it, they've said that kind of induced them to try to reach a reconciliation too.
That's it. Both of mine are discoveries. They are processes of discovery. And although I think the idea of writing a happy thought every night is fabulous. Maybe I'm going to try it because mine have been about loss. But I think also, I hope there's some joy in there, especially with the reconciliation and the understanding that comes in the end.
Happy. And then you get into a little bit less pleasant, and then you can get to the real issues.
And by the way, for the record, I have a 24 and counting marriage going on now, so yay.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thanks so much, everybody.
And that brings us next to Barb Rebbeck.
Hello, I'm the current program chair for DWW. So this series was originally my idea. So I'm very happy that we pulled it off in spite of COVID and everything. And I thank the library for all of their help. In my other life, before I became a writer, I taught writing for years as a language arts teacher and a consultant. Then when I retired, I decided to see if I could do it myself. So I actually published my first YA novel in 2015. It's called Nola Gals, and it's a story of Hurricane Katrina and 2 teen girls who survive it. My next book is coming out. I just got the cover revealed, and I was so excited. It's called The Girl from the USO, and that takes place in 1941. Starts in Detroit, and then moves to Pensacola, Florida, and then to Cornwall, England. So I'm very excited. That'll be out, I'm hoping, by Christmas. We'll see. What I want to share with you tonight is a short piece I wrote that was published in the MacGuffin, and I'm also working on a family history, and it's kind of a mixture of imagination and reality and poetry and prose. And this is a short piece. It's about myself when I was 6 years old and my Saturday spent going to catechism. I don't know if any of you had that experience. It's called The Russians Are Coming. We sit as still as we will ever be in our wooden desks. These desks are old, but pristine. No one dares carve Joe and Susie or 2 + 2, not even Jesus Loves Me on these surfaces. We are 6 years old. We squirm, waiting for her. Sister Bartholomew looms before us, a sorrowful mystery. She rises tall and spindly, always above us, her white Dominican habit casting an aura around her, her thin wire rimmed glasses resting on her nose, her dark eyes warning, no shenanigans, no sinning on this Saturday morning, please. We are the first communion class, the weekly catechism class, not the holier Catholic school students, those whose parents pay tuition and are more concerned with their children's souls than our parents, who have left us to the public school, an evil, sinful place. She clicks. We never see this instrument of clicking. She conceals it in her pale hand, the hand that also bears the gold ring she wears. Mama says that ring shows she is married to Jesus Christ himself. I try to imagine Sister in a pretty bride's dress standing next to Jesus at the altar in the church. Will they kiss? We know when we hear the click, we rise and stand, stiff beside our desks, anticipating the second click when we will kneel, our knees on cold tile, heads lowered. The girls need to be careful not to tangle themselves up in their cotton dresses. It's easier for the boys who kneel in pants, some worn and patched at the knees. Wait, don't look right. Wait, don't look left. And never, never look forward at sister herself, or surely we will turn to solid stone, forever embedded in this classroom. They will close off the doorway and only let children gaze into the room from its window, as a nun tells the tragic tale of the bad girls and boys who didn't obey sister, and we remain frozen in time. Jesus watches over us from the crucifix above the black chalkboard. Our parents come and weep, wishing they had sent us to Catholic school where we would have known how to behave, to look down, heads bowed in prayer. Click, beside the desk. Click, we may sit. Boys and girls, she rasps, stopping to poke the unfortunate wiggly boy before her. Sit up straight. Yes, sister, his voice trembles. Scanning our faces, she continues. Now soon you will celebrate your first communion. You are soldiers of Christ, true to your faith. Yes? Is Roy Rogers a Catholic, I wonder? He has a gun. Dale Evans has one too. Yes, sister, we spit back in shaky unison. And so, now she pulls out the big guns, full force into the fire with Tom Corbett's flashing space gun we can get with cereal stamps. If the evil Russians come, our eyes now bugging at the mention of Russians focus on sister, zooming in on her hand that strays to the oversized crucifix on the black beaded rosary that dangles from her belted waist. It is really hard to be still. That's right, children. If the heathen Russians arrive and set up a huge pot right outside this window, she pivots and pokes her finger forward. This very window, and they hang the pot from a large hook. It is so large it takes 10 men. They pour gallons and gallons of oil into that pot, and then they stack wood underneath it and set it on fire. We listen, hearts racing. Please, Jesus, don't let me pee my pants. Sister goes on. The soldiers rush to the doors, break them down, march up our stairs, and burst into this very room. We can't help ourselves. Our heads snap to the door, expecting troops. We gasp. Sure, we are about to die. Maybe Superman? Is he Catholic? Up in the air, it's a bird. No, we are doomed. And they ask each one of you. Now she turns from the window, her finger seeking us out one by one. You. If the Russians ask if you are a Catholic, and that oil is bubbling hot, ready to cook you if you say yes, what will you do? Click, beside the desk. Click, knees. What will you say? She menaces. Yes, sister. Again? Yes, sister. We see ourselves as Friday's fish fry, battered, bobbing, dead, but in the express lane to heaven to be with Jesus. That's it.
Here's one question here.
Yes.
Barb, how do you determine which subjects' memories would be best shared as poetry or prose?
That's a good question, because some of it's ending up what you call prose poetry. For instance, I've written one, it's prose poem. I had a, I guess she would have been my great-great-grandmother, and she had 7 children, but she lost 5 of them between the ages of 1 and 3. So I tried, she was a devout Catholic and she was French, and that came to me that should be a poem, but it's more prosy, because what I tried to do was imagine what she did at the death of each one of those babies in the row. One girl survived in between the babies, and then one was the youngest. So that's an example of mixing up the prose and the poetry.
All right. All right, thank you. I don't see any more questions at the moment.
Okay.
And now we have Laura Hedgecock.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to basically give you a little teaser promotion about an upcoming presentation that DWW is doing on October 19th at 7 p.m. And I just put the Eventbrite link in the chat. And basically, it's me talking about writing about your family history. And to give you a little background on myself, I'm an author, a speaker, I'm a genealogy blogger, and I'm passionate about helping others tell their stories, which connect loved ones with their family and their ancestry. I serve as president of the 3,400 member Geneabloggers organization, DWW, where I'm secretary. I'm a member of the Association of Professional Genealogists, the Genealogical Speakers Guild, and several local and regional genealogy societies. One of my books is Memories of Me, a complete guide to telling and sharing the stories of your life. And it guides and empowers memory collectors with down-to-earth practical advice and creative ideas. Whereas Memories of Me was aimed at amateur writers or hobby writers, there's no reason that serious and professional writers shouldn't write about their family stories. In fact, there's a lot of very good reasons that they should. So this presentation will cover the types of family stories and the formats we can use, why it's important for us writers and aspiring writers to document our family's past. It has a lot of ideas on getting started in generating ideas and finding context for these stories. So once again, it's called Writing About Your Family History, and it's Monday, October 19th at 7 p.m. And the tickets are free if you happen to be a DWW member, or only $25 if you are a non-member. Barbara, did I cover everything you wanted me to cover?
Yes, I was muted. I had, yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So if you love family history, it's just the next step on a lot of the things we've been talking about and how wonderful these family stories can be to write about.
All right, thank you, Laura.
We can save the chat if anybody wants to do that, and then you've got all this wonderful information here. Cool.
Definitely. So on behalf of Detroit Working Writers, I would like to thank the staff at the Royal Oak Public Library, Matthew Day and Ed Pank. I would also like to thank our program chair, Barb Rebbeck, for putting this first in a series of 3 together. And thank our speakers tonight, Angela Rochon, Nancy Owen Nelson, Barb Rebbeck, and Laura Hedgecock. Please be sure to check out our DetroitWorkingWriters.org website for further information, and certainly feel free to register for our upcoming Royal Oak Public Library Falling for a Good Book presentations, and also later this month for Laura Hedgecock's presentation as well, registration through Eventbrite. Thank you for coming, everyone. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.